G'day pals, welcome back to a new video. Today we'll be discussing development. Hell. It's a scary topic that does come up a lot in game development, and one that is the explanation of why many projects sink to the bottom of the abyss with no way of escaping. I have had experiences with development hell, and I identify hell as 3 circles that I hope to navigate you through, help you navigate. So today I want to discuss them and chat about them. The first circle is the circle of discouragement. Your ability to make the game is just failing because the more you add, the more complex it's getting, and your ability to engineer it just isn't in line with what you're trying to make, right? It just gets more and more messy. The spaghetti is piling and you just have no way of proceeding. The second circle is dissonance. You're making content, you're making features, but those things just don't cohere. There's just no way that they fit together. There's no playtesting going on. It's just make, and you've got your infinitely sized sandbox full of cool things that you like to build, but that don't actually go anywhere. And the third circle is the circle of disorientation. The ability to determine what you should be working on at any one time, right? You know what you're trying to make. You're able to make it, but you are getting lost in tasks that feel important that maybe players don't care about. Maybe doesn't affect the success of your game or the goals that you have for it. This is extremely difficult to spot and takes a lot of experience, and maybe is something that requires a complete reframing of what your project means to you. Yo, hey, just wanted to say Wishlist insignia on Steam if you're a real one. Thank you very much. So those are the 3 circles of development hell. Let's look at them in a little bit more detail. Okay, the first circle of development hell, the hell of discouragement. Let's talk about it. Allow me to tell you a story that I think might reflect you. Right? I'm going to tell you your story as a hobbyist, as someone who's gotten into game dev through YouTube, who's maybe learned some tutorials and who wants to make a game. You probably got into game development because you're excited about the idea of making games, but you're really excited about the idea of the tasks involved in making the game, the animations, the code, the sound design, the music. These are fun things to do as an individual. You don't feel any friction in the process of like making your game, right? This feels great at the start because you're doing things that you like to do, and it's in the name of making a video game that's going to make you $1 million one day. So that's exciting. And at a certain point, you're going to start to feel a drag. This is the beginning of hell, right? You are changing things about the game, you're adding things to the game, and something is slowing you down. You just don't seem to be getting any closer to the game releasing one day. This circle is when you have a workflow that does not scale. The more you add to the game, the more it feels like the game is harder and harder to make, right? You keep adding stuff, and the thought of adding more stuff makes you anxious because how are you going to balance all of this code or all of these hand-drawn animations? What if I want to change something about my animations and I got to change the color of the character's scarf in 30,000 hand-drawn frames that I drew in Photoshop because I wanted my game to have a painterly aesthetic and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that stuff's hard, okay? That stuff's going to drag. It'll be an anxious time trying to resolve those problems. Some of those things are commitments that are destructive that you just can't change, right? If you've committed to an art style, hey, maybe you just should commit to the art style. But some of those things are able to be mitigated with intelligent workflows. If you're a programmer and your code is a big mess, hey, there's a great opportunity for you to become a better code architect, because code is one of those things that you can fix. You can refactor it into something that is super robust, that is very extensible, that does not drag when you add more to it, but actually empowers you to do new cool things the more you add to it. I'll give you the perfect example of something that deserves to be refactored. When I made my game, the first thing I did was make 3 different enemies. Those 3 enemies were unique, right? They're different, so they should have different scripts. each script was one monolith per enemy that included the state machine, targeting the player, walking towards the player, doing attacks. So much of that is overlapping between the enemies, technically. Like the way that the enemy finds the player probably should overlap all of the enemies. If they can see the player, their way of seeing them is the same. You don't want to rewrite that. You're only going to write it once and use it in multiple places. So modularizing the code is a way of minimizing how much you write. Because if you know about solid principles, or if you've heard of the single responsibility principle, or the concept of don't repeat yourself, this is what code is good for, right? You write it once, you use it multiple places, multiple instances. 3D graphics are another way of doing this, right? If you have rigged motion, you can make 30 characters and they all use the same rig, right? There are ways to create workflows that are more procedural, that reuse more and more kind of the work. And so having a workflow that allows you to navigate smoothly through the game, this also goes to level design too, is super critical. And the first time you are making a game, especially if it's a small game, you might not even notice this. You might get to release without really noticing this. But the bigger you try to go, the more this will really matter. Having good workflows, good architecture that is scalable. So the second circle of development hell, that is the hell of dissonance. Let's talk about it. This is less about making the content, and it's more about knowing what content should be made in the game to have an experience that's fun for players. Okay, so like I'm making a game, it's action adventure, there's story content, right? Cutscenes and dialogue and side quests. There's action content, right? Enemies that you fight and platforms that you get around. And there's even sort of like exploration content. There's chests in hidden areas. There's, special things that you can do if you just, poke the edges of the game. So all of that content is separate and it doesn't necessarily have to cohere, right? Just because you wrote a story and just because you made some enemies and just because you made some levels, that doesn't mean that stuff's going to be fun. You might have like a big sandbox where you've got, the player character can do this and I've got these enemies and you can do that. And I've got all this stuff you can do, but I don't have like an experience that you do it in where it's definitively this way and it needs to be this way for any particular reason. This is a direction issue, right? This is an issue of not having a clear sense of each of your gameplay pillars, right? Each of those aspects of what makes the game relating to each other. I find that this is mostly a problem of not having a relationship with players. So if you're making a game that's for you and you're adding all of these features to it, those features don't have to exist inside of a play experience any longer than like 10 seconds, 30 seconds of you playtesting them. And then you sort of move on to the next thing you're interested in making. And the journey of that piece of content ends there. But in a produced game, in a finished game, that piece of content needs to live inside of the play experience. If someone was to watch a long play of your game, where does that content get introduced? If you have the context that you've placed the game in already, then you can start thinking about things like the tutorialization of those features. You can think about the opportunities in game for the player to actually interact with those things and all the pieces together and start thinking about the experience as a composition rather than as a bunch of little things, right? It's great to build things as a bunch of little things, but the game is a composition of all of those things over time. There's something here that's like extremely valuable that I don't think people connect most of the time. A game being fun, like, it's a fun game, is not about the game being exciting. It's not about the game being flashy or juicy. That's not what fun is. Fun is being able to sustain a player's sense of purpose over time. That's when we say fun, sometimes we mean fun in a sensory way, but sometimes what we really mean is like engagement. Like, I need to craft this sword so that I can fight that enemy, so that I can get to the door behind the enemy, so that I can save the, kid from the goblin clan. If you take any one of those pieces and just say, here's an enemy, you can fight it, that's not purpose, right? That's just a mechanic. A mechanic on its own is just a thing. It's not something that has a directed sense of drama to it. So creating drama in your game is only possible if you have a sense of the play experience compositionally over time as a story. Even if your game doesn't have a story, there is still a series of factors that you want to introduce, tension that you want to create, and ways of releasing that tension in satisfying ways. Okay, that's what fun really is. And so you will be in content hell until you are creating playable experiences that are play testable, that are in ways that are longer and longer, right? Ideally, you're thinking in terms of the whole game, title screen to credits by the end of it. And the final circle of disorientation, let's talk about it. You can build a game competently. You can think about the story that you're trying to tell with your elements, right? And how they go together to make a fun experience. But somehow you still aren't able to get to this release point, right? You're still dragging on the game. The third circle of development hell is the hell of understanding the identity of you in production day to day. Remember, at the start of this, most likely, more than likely, you are a hobbyist first. You are someone who started game development because you like the technical side. You like making things. Your passions, your animations, it's your code, it's your story, it's your script, it's your music and sounds, right? Making a game sometimes requires things that aren't that. Making a game requires marketing. You have to tweet about your game every day. You have to think about trailers, and you have to think about how you're going to produce your game, how it's going to be available in different languages, in different countries, accessibility, right? Are people who are deaf going to be able to understand your game? Does your game have good spelling through all of its dialogue? Is your game bug-free? Does it run well on different systems? These are tasks that are player-oriented, right? And go towards the play experience. And there are lots of tasks in the day-to-day of making a game that can be justified as player tasks, but really they're more for you, right? There is a distinction here. There's a tension between doing things that I want to do for me because I like to do them versus doing things so that my game can release one day. And the latter is a very organized, hierarchical structure of events, of tasks that you'll need to be balancing between at any one time. Sometimes you need to be more focused on marketing. Sometimes you need to be more focused on tooling. Sometimes you're thinking about play tests, and sometimes you're thinking about re-prototyping things. It's not about necessarily fighting between your instinct to create new things and your instinct to finish the thing. Those things have to happen, right? You can't make a novel experience if the game that you're making has had no time for you to explore concept. And that requires prototyping, which will require a little bit of not directionlessness, but you won't be heading towards release tangibly. It won't be obvious that the tasks that you're doing are heading towards you releasing the game and shipping it. That concept of locally, right now, this isn't heading towards release, but I do need to do this to be more confident about what I'm building. That's the confidence that will get you out of the frame of mind of development hell. Development hell is a frame of mind. It's about your confidence that what you're building is heading towards something. Whether it is or it isn't is kind of up to whatever. You're just making a thing. Games don't have to be shipped products on Steam. They don't have to be things that you go to the shop and buy. A game can just be a thing that you're doing for you, right? If you're just doing it for you, then you're not in development hell. You're just enjoying your hobby. So what development hell really is a failure to understand the values that you have, your expectations for the project that you're building. And that failure to understand what you're doing leads to behavior that doesn't actually head in any particular direction. Being blown about by the wind or doing things in service of a kind of expectation that's not what the player cares about. Those things are going to be hell in relation to a shipped game. But I mean, like, under a different context, you could just think of those things as like fun things you want to do with your life. If you want your game to be enjoyed by players, you have to play test constantly. It could be about putting a time box on it, right? It could be like, I want to release this in a year, so I have to lower my expectations about what I'm making. That's totally valid. And I think at a certain point, once you have expectations, then you can start measuring reality, right? If you have an actual goal that has a real, by this date, I want to do this thing. Okay, now you can start tracking how fast you work, your experience, your finances. You can start thinking about how to turn those practicalities into either you can make it or not, right? Is this feasible or is it infeasible? This is something that I've experienced over like 10 years. I also made a smaller game because I was kind of burnt out on the main game in 2020, and I released that. And that didn't satisfy me. There were times when making the smaller game felt like hell because I was starting to realize that my own personal aspirations weren't being achieved by making a small game, right? I'm the kind of guy who wants to make a big game because the thing that inspired me to make games were big games. For people looking for direction in their careers, oftentimes there is this insistence that you should make smaller games. I think that is a perfectly valid set of advice to give someone who's just starting out and who's trying to gain confidence. If confidence is your issue, make smaller games. But I think that philosophically, you should always have aspirations towards your big dreams. Making small games should not come at the cost of what you started making games for. If you're doing them to learn, that's fine. It's probably even necessary. Or if you don't have the money to invest in making a big game, or if you want to release a game a year and you work a full-time job and you only have like 2 hours a week to spend on your game. For those among you who are interested in a career in games and who are interested in making games that reflect the kinds of games that they grew up playing, games with stories, games that are memorable, games that, especially single player games. Like for me, I'm a console guy. I grew up playing games on my Game Boy or my Nintendo, and those games have a very special place in my heart. I can't make those games without having a clear understanding of my process, without having a clear vision about what it takes to build a studio, how to work with other people, how to have a relationship with myself, right? My lifestyle. Am I able to enjoy the process of making the game while still being productive towards my target, right? Of making X amount of money or releasing by this amount by this date. It's so important to have that relationship. It's a reflection question, right? Like, what do you want out of game development? So that's my take on development hell. If you've experienced a different series of circles, please let me know in the comments below. And I wish you all the very best on your game development journey. More pixel art class and other videos to come. And if you're a real one, wishlist insignia. Thank you so much for watching, as always.